He said there will come a point in your life and you should have this realization, which I did, that you will at some point fall out of love with your business. You won't hate it, you just won't have that enjoyment. So it's not so much love. Don't have that attachment. Learn that you have to detach from it.
Hello, folks. Welcome to My First Business. I'm Naeem Parvez, and this podcast is for entrepreneurs, young or old, who are looking to improve the way that they look after their business. Each episode is designed to be like a conversation with a mentor that you never had, and you'll find inspiration, guiding principles, and possibly some solutions to your current business problems. We talk about the lows, like wanting to shut it all down, and we talk about the highs, like starting your second or your third or your fourth successful business, and also everything in between.
My guest in today's episode is Rishi Kohli. Now, Rishi is a serial entrepreneur who's founded 4 diversified businesses focused on sustainable and renewable energy. And he's done it across the Middle East and in Africa as well. His latest business is Fika Mobility. Rishi is building a new generation of electric vehicles. In fact, he's just changing the game completely. His new battery and swapping technology drastically reduces the time and the cost it takes to get these vehicles back on the road. These electric vehicles are the first of their kind. They're already on the road in Kenya, and they're creating a path towards cleaner mobility in Africa. I really love this conversation with Rishi, especially because of how deep we were able to go into the human side of entrepreneurship. Here are some of the highlights of the things we talked about. Rishi and I talked about how to balance speed and perfectionism, and we talked about the difference between being careful and right versus moving fast and breaking things. We talked about his approach to risk-taking and what he learned from his father about betting small and betting on himself. We talked about the greed that plagues entrepreneurs and how many entrepreneurs don't actually realize that the pie is big enough for everyone. We talked about the ability to retain employees and his father's magic on keeping 3 generations of people within the same business. We talked about family businesses in general, about how his mom is the best salesperson he's ever seen, how his father's been a guiding light throughout, how he works with his brother, and also how he gets inspirations from his aunts and uncles. I learned about how he iterates on his electric vehicles. Man, this guy just rolls up his sleeves and he just knows the right way to serve his right customers. Now, my dear audience, there's one main reason you should listen to this episode, and solely because of Rishi's storytelling. He was so humble throughout the conversation, I couldn't tell that I was sitting with the boss of all bosses. His warmth is something that will surely light up your day. So without much further ado, please enjoy the wisdom of Rishi Kohli on the EO series of the My First Business podcast.
This episode is brought to you by the Entrepreneurs Organization. Now, before I tell you what they do, first, let me tell you the numbers behind Entrepreneurs Organization, or EO for short. So they started in 1987. They've currently got 17,000 influential business owners as their members, spread across 213 chapters in 60 plus countries worldwide. They've been in the UAE since 1997 and have 119 members here, with a median member sales of roughly $4 million. And altogether, the total number of people employed by their members is over 23,000. And they've got members from all sorts of industries, including technology, healthcare, oil and gas, real estate, hospitality, jewelry, communications, logistics, travel. I could really go on. Mind blown yet? Now, here's what EO is actually all about. Here's what you get for being a member of EO, or here's what they do for you. EO in UAE provides an effective platform for networking, education, and support for business owners. The entrepreneurial journey can be lonely, and I can attest to that. And with an economy that changes on a dime, it can be hard to know what your next move should be. And that's where EO comes in with their support. One of the key benefits of membership is access to a robust calendar of events, including workshops, social events, and learning opportunities. So you get a ton of networking opportunities, as well as a chance to learn from experts in your own field. EO also offers a mentorship program, so they pair you up with experienced business leaders who can offer guidance and support as you grow your own business. So for me, I've personally or vicariously benefited a lot from being in the EO network through their accelerator program, of which my partner is a part of. And if you're a business owner tired of taking on your challenges all alone and are looking for unique networking opportunities, along with structured support through accountability groups and mentors, Well, you can either start a podcast like I did, or if you don't want to do that, I highly encourage you to apply to EO. I'll leave a link for you in the show notes. And if you're not fully convinced yet, I'll be bringing on business owners on this podcast that are currently members of EO, including today's guest, so you can get a sneak peek of what you're getting. Rishi, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Naeem.
I don't want to get too emotional, but maybe you will. I do want to start somewhere where I think is quite formative for you, where I've been told by a little birdie.
Yeah, I wonder who this birdie is.
I'm not going to reveal my sources, but
Sure.
the little birdie knows who they are.
Okay.
Your father
Yeah.
was the first in your line of generation to be entrepreneurial. Is that fair to say, or was it happening before him as well?
I would say from an impact point of view, the person I remember was him. I know his grandfather was an entrepreneur.
Okay, so your great-grandfather.
Yeah. So he moved to Kenya, I would say late sort of 1880s, 90s, from Lahore, which was then undivided India, and then came to Kenya, and he set up, I guess, he was probably one of the first Indians to do it globally, the corner shop, but in the middle of some forest.
Yeah.
And he was supplying whatever, cigarettes,
Bread.
bread, and ended up with a huge area of land and of like a big tree estate sort of thing.
Wait, wasn't he there to set up like a railway?
So I think that was probably the plan, but that came much later for a lot of the Indians who came. But he was, from my understanding, the recollections, because he came a lot earlier, he was the guy who turned up on dhows. But yeah, there was a whole bunch of other family who also turned up to build a railway from what was Mombasa all the way up to the other side of Kenya, which is the eastern side, and into Uganda, and I'm not sure how far, or the Great East African Railway, as it was called.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the real impact was, who I would remember, would be my father, yes.
Like starts there. And the reason that I ask is, so I don't come from a line of businessmen or businesswomen.
Yeah.
And not to my parents' fault. Like they did what they had to do. And, I do admire anyone who's non-entrepreneur as well, that they play a very important role in society. But growing up, for Alina and myself, my wife and business partner, we didn't have that kind of someone to look up to. So all I've been doing is looking for role models. And what I've also learned in my journey of Dubai business people, for example, there's a lot of family business people. And I have fallen in love with generational businesses because for something to stand the test of time through multiple generations, and no matter what comes in a way, it gets stronger. So the anti-fragility of them as well, some of the ones that I'm seeing here, is so inspirational. And I feel like those lessons are not captured in your typical business books or your MBA courses. There's something special about the lesson and the wisdom. So I want to tease some of that out. Sure. You do also have some uncles that you look up to in this line, or was the little birdie wrong about that?
There are a couple of uncles who've been very successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Namely my mum's brother. He ran a very successful nursery school. Both him and his wife, my auntie, they ran a very successful nursery school. Their story was actually very phenomenal. She was a teacher, special needs teacher. He was a financial controller, stroke manager, became managing director of one of the most exclusive Jaguar, Daimler, Rolls-Royce dealerships in London in the sort of late 80s, early 90s. He then went on to set up a nursery school with his wife, and they set it up, I'm not sure, like porta cabins you find on construction sites, for the construction sort of engineer's office and all that sort of stuff. They set it up with, I think it was 3 or 4.
It's a good business.
And then it went on to 12. And then I remember him buying a huge old listed priory building on like 3-4 acres of land, totally renovated the inside. And it became a nursery school of, I think, 250 or 300 kids, 50 staff. And then he eventually exited it as well. Awesome. But he's very entrepreneurial. He then said he's going to take a break. He put his hands into different things, which I'm not going to talk about because it's not my story. And he then moved to another end of the country in the UK.
Yeah.
He's just set up another nursery school, and which my cousins are now running with him.
Yeah.
And now they're setting up a second one. And I think that entrepreneurial bug is in him, and it probably flows from both sides.
Yeah.
Aside from my father, I think a real true entrepreneur is my mother, actually.
Okay.
She extremely creative, talented woman. And she, I remember, had this, passion of just entertaining really well at home when we grew up in Kenya. So people would come home, should have amazing fruit displays. Aside from the amazing food and whatever she was doing, amazing fruit displays and amazing flower displays, which she would create herself. And very often friends and family would say, we're having a dinner party at home. Could you do some flowers for us? So mum will she'll say, okay, what's your color theme? And they'll be like, I don't know, red and white or whatever it is, pink and white or whatever it is. And she'll do some flowers for them and just take it there as a gift.
Yeah.
And then she got pushed through, I would say, family and friends again to say, why don't you take this seriously? And one of her closest friends, they were building a building, and her friend ran an Indian high-end women's wear boutique, who she was very close to. And they said, we've got this corner at the end of the boutique, which we're not going to use. And it's like 800,000 square foot. Why don't you put up a shop there? And mum was also known for having great homewares at home. So she went off to London, and I still remember this. I think it was sort of mid-90s. And she was away from us for about 2 to 3 weeks, actually a month. She went to a florist, which is by royal appointment. At that time, Her Majesty the Queen, called Mrs. Stevens, and she used to go and train there in the Mayfair and Harrods branches on a floristry course to upskill.
Yeah.
And she qualified with very high ratings for that. She then came back, opened the shop, but she also took on major distribution brands for high-end homeware stuff. So you could talk about your cut glass, your Riddle crystal brands, your Port Marians, your high-end crockery and beautiful ornaments that go in your house. And she set up a shop. And I remember around sort of Diwali, Christmas, big sort of, calendar events in the year, these containers used to arrive from either the UK, India, Europe, and our front yard, we had a huge front yard in Kenya, would be repackaged. Just boxes and boxes. And I remember her just sitting there under the shade with all this. Obviously in those days, there's no major inventory on computers, right? So it's all like manually recorded. Oh, this broke, this goes there and whatever. And we'd get involved. And then she went off and would then do an exhibition either in the shop or hire out an exhibition corner in a hotel, do like, cocktails or whatever it is, high tea for the women. And she would then sell to these high-end customers or just customers as a whole. Yeah. And literally within 2-3 days of those exhibitions or a week of that stuff arriving, everything was gone. Then we moved to the UK, and then she was, my brother and I were there, and my mother and father were back and forth. That was a big life changer, but we can come out to why that was a life changer for me then. And she then she was spending a bit more time in the UK, and then she said, I want to open a business here. And I actually found a florist shop for sale, and I negotiated a sale of the shop, and then we bought the shop and she ran it. But this was a totally different piece. It was a pure florist shop, freezing cold. You're dealing with flowers, you're dealing with umpteen amount of deliveries. We ran it for, I think, 3-4 years. I remember Valentine's Days, you used to do like 500 deliveries, and they had to be in by 5 o'clock because everyone's going home, or earlier because everyone's going to go and do their hair and get ready and whatever. And I used to take day off for that, and the pressure you'd have with that. But it was great fun. Mother's Day, Christmas, all those sort of stuff. But yeah, mum also had a great mum. I believe between my mother and father. Is probably the more sales. I would say they're both go-getters, very driven, very hardworking. But mum is more the salesperson. She is very much, I know how to sell. Like even now when I talk to her about my new business, which is the electric mobility business in Kenya, which is Fika. She'll say,
Yeah.
and I'll come back. So, how many bikes did you sell, and who's buying them? And I'm like, well, it's a new technology. It's not that easy, and we're getting there. We've sold 2 more. We sold 5 more, and this, and And I remember during COVID when I had to pivot from my waterless car washing business to disinfection and sanitization.
Yeah.
The office just couldn't cope with the incoming minor calls.
Yeah.
And she said, I'll come. I'll handle it. And she actually came in for 2 days or 3 days.
I love it.
And actually the sales came in a lot higher because she's just like, we do this and we that. And she's also
That's the person you need on the phone, right?
Yeah, she's also OCD because she could sell the whole, you need to do this, and this and that. And she's very entrepreneurial.
I love the sound of that because I think, as you're telling the story, I was kind of relating, yet not. I feel like if my mom had the opportunity, our stories would match a lot. It's just that, she took the role of being a homemaker more seriously. And, that was kind of, the life that was set out for her. But in the back of her, the hustle, I can still see it today in just the way she runs a home. If she were given the chance, my dad says now that he's 71, he tells me, he's like, your mom could be the Prime Minister of Pakistan if I had let her work. That's he says. If I had let her work, she would have been in office right now, running the country.
Yeah, and that's amazing coming from your father as well. Right?
Yeah, and he realizes that too, right? It was. I mean, it's a cultural thing too, right? Like that she had to fight a bit, but you know what? That's why you have kids so that they can live on to the dream. So I wanna see how much from your parents, from your mom and your dad, and I feel like I'll get different answers knowing now that they're 2 different personalities. Let's talk about risk taking. Who did you pick up your heuristics and thinking about risk taking, risk mitigation? We were chatting a bit before we started recording, and you seem to be a bit more calculated, if I'm right. I'm just wondering, where did that develop? From which side did that develop more?
The calculating side?
Yeah, being more calculated.
I think it's a bit of both. Whilst mum is very much a bit more of the go-getter and the salesperson, she would take risks. But I think earlier on, dad was very much a risk taker and would do it. I guess he was younger then and would do it. But obviously, the last few years of when I remember, he passed away nearly just over 9 years ago. But for the last probably 5-6 years of the decade before was quite tough for him in business. But he never stopped. He'd never let that come across. But what I'm trying to say is with him, I think prior to that decade before he passed away, he was very much a risk taker as well. Yeah. But when it came to risk in business, but not risk in investments, if that makes sense. It's two
What's
different.
The difference?
I think, so if he had money and he wanted to invest it, he would be more conservative about doing the investments, like something that guarantees him a return. But he was also a little bit more trustworthy with certain people about giving that investment or where to look after his money. Did it work all the time? No, but that's also not their fault, but some of it could have been. But it's not, you don't blame people. You took the risk yourself, right?
Yeah. But he likes to bet on himself more.
He did. But he would give, when it came to the business side, he would look for the opportunity a lot quicker. Like if something was not.
What would be an example?
So
if you remember a story.
I remember. So this is probably where my sort of taste of entrepreneurship came up, or getting involved in a business came up. I think I was about 17, and it was like what we call equivalent, the summer break, sort of June, July. And my father, his business it's nothing exciting, but I owe everything, or my brother and I and the family owe everything to that business because it fed us, clothed us, educated us, and put us where we are. And he gave us everything from there, and including what mum's business came much, much later on. His business is spare parts in a very small, obscure town. They call it a city now, but it's very small, in Western Kenya, called Kisumu. It's by Lake Victoria. And he basically does specialized parts for reconditioning brakes and clutches for transport and other spare parts. And he went into that specialism and he grew. And that's the town he was born in. And obviously my grandfather was back in the day the mayor, and MP and the freedom fighter from there and everything. So that was his home. I remember Dad, then obviously you not just do business there, you do it right across the country. And I remember around early 90s, he started to venture into going to like the main port in Mombasa because there's a lot of opportunity, right? And he would be supplying materials that link to the transport industry from, so whether it be brakes or clutches. And then there'd be more specialized parts that needed to be done. But that wouldn't stop him. I remember going with him once to the port, and I think it was around early July. I was there, I was just walking around. I was like literally like carrying the files. Like literally, there were files in those days, no computers and laptops for us. And he was carrying these 5 files, and it's super hot and humid, and you're walking around. And he'd be like, take this file to this guy, go and pick up this tender from there. And I'm like a runner.
Yeah.
But it educates you, right? And he said, he'll give you a certain file, ask him the file for these computer boards that they need on the cranes. And I'm looking at him going, don't do that. And he's like, can you just go and pick it up? So I went, picked it up, gave it to him. And then the phone call goes to somebody in London, or my uncle, who's the uncle I spoke about, says, can you help us look for these? He said, yeah, I know, we'll check. And he's obviously checking Square to finding, yellow pages and whatever it was, and different ways of finding stuff out, ringing people. And there's a way of finding it, right? And the directories worked. And he sniffed an opportunity out of that. And he sold these special computer circuit boards that went on huge, the big cranes you see in ports here and globally. They are the sort of control cranes, main controller, where in those days the guy would sit up there and control, and they still do. And it would be the main control board for it. And he sold like 50 of them. And I'm like, Dan, how do you do this? He said, look, I got the product, supplied it, and then he takes the agency on for it. And that's how he was. He would sniff something and say, let me build on this.
And have you picked that up as well for yourself, would you say?
Yes, but I've also learned in more recent times to focus, because I also saw some mistakes in that with him. Not with him generally, but you see it yourself.
With the model itself,
Yeah? Sorry?
With the model itself of
I think in those days it was very much, he sniffed an opportunity, his feet were on the ground, he was in there, he could supply the product, distribution agencies were quicker to come by, and I think also the world in terms of how you would do business was more trusting. Like you could literally say to these guys, we're buying, it didn't come 50 boards as one, it was like, we'll do 20 of these circuit board, computer boards now, but there's a potential of 50, and then 10 came, 20 came, and then he would send a fax, because that's what it was. And the fax would go through, and he would be like, could we now look into a more formal agreement or an agency? And the next thing comes through is an agency agreement, right? Or an appointment letter. Whereas now it's all about, how is your distribution channel? What's your go-to-market plan and all that? Whereas in those days, I think that relationship and trust was a lot more different.
Now it's tenders after tenders.
We were tendering then, right?
Yeah.
But because we had the confidence on the ground to achieve it. But I think he was very good at picking up opportunities. He was very much a relationship person. And that's the one thing I pick up from him. And I think so does my brother. And I talk about him because we work together in certain businesses that we have. We've got some family collaboration there and in stuff we've grown, which we'll come to. But his basic thing is relationship. If you can bring relationship. And his biggest motto, what I will always remember him for, was, you could club them together, is integrity, honesty. But if you're honest and, integrity is paramount to you, you will succeed. And if you build that relationship and trust with people, you will only grow and enhance, and I think that was the big takeaway I have with how he would, I grew up in my early years, very, very sort of formative years. My father having this business in Kisumu, we living in Nairobi, somebody running the day-to-day operations of the, you could say the warehouse, the shop front, whatever, the workshop and all that. But I remember my father literally leaving every Monday morning and hitting the road and crisscrossing by car, not by flight, Kenya, and coming back on Friday night. There's some horrific stories. He'd go into these farmlands to meet transporters because he has to supply clutches and brakes worth 50 to 100 tractors and their transport for wheat and sugar factories. And I remember once there was no mobile phones, so he would go there and then he would radio call from the camp to the farm guy and say, please call my wife and say I've reached safely and I'm here for the night. And this particular night, there was no phone call.
Oh.
And I still remember this, me and my mother sitting there. My brother was very young then, going, where is dad? Where is dad? And then finally this guy called back to say, look, he's in the game park. This is the Masai Mara game park.
Okay.
They were crossing. His car got stuck. He helped he got out. He helped another car that got stuck. In that process, they both got stuck 100 meters down the road in a marsh. And the rangers have identified that him and his colleague are in this van with other tourists, but they're surrounded by lions. But the rangers are there. So we had that comfort. But you're still kind of thinking, hang on, Mum didn't say this to me, and the guy didn't say it, the sort of farm owner didn't say it in detail, that he said, they're stuck there, they're okay. We only knew about the lions thing more in detail when he came back 2 days later. But here's this, if it was me and I'd got out the next morning, which he did at 5, 6 in the morning, went to the camp, had a shower, I would have gone to sleep, relaxed, sat by the pool and got a bit of R&R, recharged my batteries. No, what did he do? He had a shower, he got up, had breakfast, and hit the road to go and make money again. That was him. That was his spirit.
That's amazing.
Very hardworking, very sort of...
You mentioned in there he took relationships pretty seriously. So I want to talk about not just suppliers and customers, but even building a team. Like especially in his businesses, I don't think they were solo businesses, right? He had to build a team around that. What have you picked up and what have you put into practice, or maybe even what do you challenge in terms of how he worked with his operators of his business or his second in commands or just generally anyone in the business?
So a lot of people thought he was very much one-man show, which he kind of showed that to the world. But if you look at the back operations of this workshop and everything, at the highest point, he only employed 15, 20 people. But he always, because of the relationship in that town, he would employ people he trusted, right? In terms of second in command, third in command, and so on and so forth. And he had immense trust in all of them. But when you look at the wider team who were the operators on machines and, working around the workshop and all that, he built immense trust, but he also made sure that he would employ within their family group. So the local Kenyan indigenous, whoever they were working, their family. The business is now 40 plus years old. My father employed a gentleman. His son is there. His grandson is there. So there are 3 generations working in that business till today. The person working there has known me since I was 2 years old, right? So for him, my father was also like a father. The person who runs the business today, like day-to-day operations, has been with the family 36 years. So
how do you replicate that in these okay, I don't want to be maybe in these times or even in Dubai, like what is it about the founder or the owner of the business to not be able to attract one person for life but their kids and probably their grandkids?
I think people today are impatient. All right. Now if you look at Dubai or you look at more modern metropolis style cities like Dubai, it's harder to keep people retained, right? Or and very few are like that. We have someone in our group office in Leme Group's wider office. He's been with us 12 years. In my car washing company, I've got someone 11 years now. We would have had 13, but he had to go back post-COVID because he did get COVID. He was intubated for 8 weeks. He nearly passed away, but he wants to come back, but his health is still not 100%. So if you effectively think about it, we build very special relationships with people. And we instill that belief that, yes, you work in the company, but this is your family. And we take care of one another. When my father passed away, these 3-4 people, maybe even wider, I was in with him when he passed away. and my mother and brother were here, my wife were here, but they were the big support network that morning, making sure tickets were booked, making sure, everything was sorted out. Who's going to look after the business? I mean, immediate, like we don't know how long we're away for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, that everything just kicked in. And I think, and that was still very early on. Like I'm saying, somebody's been with us 12 years and he passed away 9 years ago. So he's only been in the company 3 years.
Yeah.
But this particular one or two individuals have seen us go through our pains and our struggles.
Yeah.
So, and they've been with us, you could say as right-hand men or women.
Yeah.
And they
almost as a part of your family then, right?
That's the difference. That's the difference here. They're part of your family. They come to, some of them have even flown out to, we've flown them out, but they've also flown out to my brother's wedding.
Yeah.
That's how close we see them. They are family to us.
Yeah.
And that's the relationship.
And is that a pipe dream for a lot of people? Because, stories like these are getting rarer and rarer and rarer. To be able to keep people that long, like what can a business owner do to encourage that, knowing that people are a lot pickier, they're a lot more impatient now, and part of it is the honesty and integrity and things that just come naturally to you in terms of relationship building. But is there a missing factor that more business owners can have so that they can develop these kind of relationships long term with people?
I think empathy is one. Right? Empathy is one. You need to be empathetic and show vulnerability as well as a business owner, as a founder, co-founder, whatever you're, CEO, man, it doesn't matter. The title's irrelevant.
Yeah.
You need to also show vulnerability to your team that you can make mistakes and how you own up to them.
Yeah.
And I don't mean this in a Dubai, UAE, Middle Eastern or a South Asian way, because that's predominantly where the employment base comes out of. Mm-hmm. I think this very sort of yes sir, subservient, obedient thing of, if I make a mistake, I'll lose my job.
Yeah.
That culture needs to go away here. And I think we have come a long way here in the 16 years or 15, nearly 16 years I've been here. I think that's going away.
Yeah.
But I still see... when you employ somebody who's only been here 6 months, you can see, oh God, this is that cycle is going to repeat, that they're going to be scared to own up to a mistake or even tell you the mistake until it's way further down the line.
Yeah.
And I think it's like they should be open enough and transparency, right? Be transparent enough to acknowledge that. And I think owners need to be a bit more open in their relationship. Get to know that person.
Yeah.
Just simple things like, I don't do it often and I haven't done it often enough, but just, go and sit with them, in your staff canteen, or go and grab a chai in the winter on the road with them, or a little casual lunch with them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be fun. Go and eat what food they relate to. It doesn't matter. You're kind of getting to know somebody.
Yeah.
Yes, there's some cultures who are a bit sort of reserved and they don't want you interfering in that.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But that doesn't mean they don't believe in what you're doing or what you're saying. And I think, yes, it's rare.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's only just a problem here. I think I see it in Kenya as well. Like Fika, I got the most, Fika's just about 2 years old, coming up to in June this year, as an up and running business.
Yeah.
We had an engineer join us just a few months after that. So he's been with us like consistently, puts in the hours. And somebody joined us in end of March last year. And on the day it was the 1 year anniversary, she sent one of the most beautiful messages to me. And I did get a little emotional. I looked at this and I said, wow, I've got people who have sat with me for 12 years and they'll say, sir, it's great. I've been here 12 years. Thank you very much. And, you'll do a lunch for them and give them a little memento or a gift or something.
Yeah.
And I was so touched with what she wrote to me. And I thought, you know what? I didn't remember. And I felt bad because I didn't remember she's been with you me in a year, because the year's gone so fast.
Yeah.
And she's talking about what she's learned from me and collectively as a small team.
Yeah.
Whereas I didn't remember and obviously now the response to her was to say how well she's done, how well she's growing, which she is.
Yeah.
And I think that recognition And not false recognition just for the sake of it. Be genuine about your relationship with your employees.
Yeah, I remember that about my first boss. She's such an inspiration. I still talk to her today. I got first job out of university, sales job, cold calling, 40 cold calls a day. Really fun, high testosterone. We were in like a Wall Street type of floor in Toronto. We're banging the phones and we're trading FX derivatives. So pretty good energy. And then I had this lady who took a chance on me. I did about 9 interviews to get that job. She wanted me to meet everyone. She couldn't believe her luck. She's like, look what I found. You got to talk to this guy. I don't know how I dress. I was the youngest hire ever, and she's taking a chance on me. And she wasn't like a crazy FX trader herself. She was the branch manager. So she'd look after the traders and the salespeople and the operation people, but she's more of a connector, right? She didn't know.
People person.
She's a people person. She had no idea what the markets were doing. She didn't care for it. But the way she made me feel comfortable as the most inexperienced, the youngest guy in his first ever job to do such a hard job, lessons that I've never been able to let go. And even if it's learning about my culture in our off hours, just to be able to talk to me about it in our one-on-ones, or just noticing from the corner of her eye if I'm in an up mood or a down mood that day, and then taking me out and then talking to me about it. Or even there's a bit of a time where I was getting ragged on and bullied in that situation because, you know, it's a very high energy / racist / fun, but like at the start I just didn't know what it's going to be like. And I went up to her and she almost cried. Like I could see tears in her eye when I was telling her I was in pain. So like that was the level of empathy she had, and I wanted to replicate that.
Because she probably felt that.
Well, she took it as a
She
responsibility.
failed as well, right? Like not fail, but like you said,
it was her responsibility. Yeah. So she took that in, and then 7 years later, I became a manager of a trading floor, and I looked after people, and I just realized how hard that is, especially when the people you want to put in the effort for may not be your A players too. Right. So like there is a time I sat with her for coffee. This is after I'm a manager and she's no longer my boss. And she asked me this one question. She's like, you have 2 people. One is a great performer. The other is a poor performer. Who would you spend more time improving? And I said, well, the poor performer, because like we need to bring them up because the good ones got to do good. She's like, no, you drop the poor performer and you spent all your energy on the good performer. And lessons like that, I'm like, how did you learn all of this? Is that true though? Is that what you would do too? If you had a poor performer, a great performer, and you had to spend energy to either improve the poor.
So you learn from that mistake, right? Or I've learned from that mistake. You hire people and you look at your A performer and then whatever, he's in sales or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And usually they're in sales because you're talking performance is usually linked to some sort of sales or growth perspective, right?
Yeah.
Or just generally in work ethic, they're a great performer.
Yeah.
And then you got the B or stroke C. I mean, C really shouldn't be in your company, right?
Yeah.
But B performers there, and you start focusing on energy, your energy there. And then you should really realize at a cutoff point that, you know, you're wasting time.
Yeah.
And I've learned that a couple of times, and we learned it the hard way as well.
Yeah.
I remember we employed somebody. She seemed like a good fit, was doing the right things, and then there was this major dip. And I remember being with a fellow EO member actually in Hyderabad at a global EO event. We were going to some dinner that evening, and we were packed in this bus. And I don't know if you've ever been to Hyderabad, but if you go through the old town at like 6, 7 in the evening, the traffic is like 1 kilometer will take you an hour. Yeah. We're all jam-packed in this bus, and I was sitting next to him, and he goes, how's this going? And he said, you hired this new operations person like a few months ago, 6 months ago. I said, you know, the first 3 months were great. And he said, and? I said, the last 2-3 months have not been great. And he said, what's the issue? And I said, this. He said, you need to cut her. You need to let her go. He said, how much time are you investing in this? I said, every other day, an hour a day. He said, dude, this is like ridiculous. You cannot be investing that time.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, you know, I still didn't listen for another 3 months because suddenly, miraculously, I come back and the performance goes up, and then it started going down again. And at that point, I had the conversation. Unfortunately, it turned nasty, but that's a different, discussion. Yeah. But I think he was obviously speaking from his own experience, where he's learned those messages. Like don't focus on, always if you see, but I don't wholly agree with them. Okay, but being devil's advocate, there are times that they're a B+ performer, or they're just. And again, I go back to the whole thing of knowing your employee. It's like knowing your customer. I grew up with this notion in life that even in your companies or our companies, we are also one another's customers, if you think about it that way.
Sure.
You're right. You should speak to each other with respect. You should
persuade each other,
ideas. Encourage each other. You've got to support each other as if you were one another's customers, right? And that respect has to be there, right? Or instilled in, you could say, the sort of, these are our values of, integrity and, respect and so on and so forth. And I think what happens is when you have these conversations with your B or B+ or B- player, or whatever you want to call them, find out where are they in their life? Wait, what position are they in? Why is it? They might just be going through something. And again, I bring it back here. So I've had this situation recently in Fika. I saw a dip in performance with somebody. And I said, what's going on? Like, this is not you. And they're like, sir, can I talk to you? I'm like, sure, when? They're like, can we schedule it for, I think it was a Thursday. And I was in Kenya, obviously. And I said, sure. And I said, but aren't you in this other office of ours tomorrow? She said, yeah, but I don't want to talk about it in the office. I said, who said we have to talk in the office? We went for a coffee at the coffee shop. And it was a very personal situation, dynamic this person was going through. We sat for 2 hours. There were tears shed on the other side. And I gave the person half day off. They came back recharged from the weekend. And they started to work on those problems within the family that they had, not using my advice. I guess EO helps you with this because we use experience share, but it works. And performance picked up. And again, I get a very nice message to say, sir, thank you very much. You really cleared my head. I needed to talk to somebody. And sometimes when you are going through an issue, you can't talk to a friend because they kind of may know the friend of a friend or a business associate who you have the issue with, or a family member, or vice versa. And sometimes just talking to a stranger can really let things off. I mean, I don't know if you've ever experienced this. I've had it once or twice.
I truly have. I have some of my closest friends that I'd rather not talk about certain things because I already know their opinion about it. Which, not to say they're bad listeners, but because they're friends and they have this kind of power in the relationship, they can get to that solution much faster instead of just listening out, right? Versus going to CBT therapy, for example, when I did in Toronto. That was such a weird experience. You're going to go talk to a stranger about your problems. But I'd walk out of there every single time feeling light. And it's not like that person helped. They just prodded on. They just poked in the right places and get me. It's kind of like almost like if you had a mentor, if you wanted a mentor, this person that you really wished was your mentor, you have them in your mind, you got their email address, you start writing them the email. Hey, I'd love to get your opinion on X, Y, Z. Before you hit send, you already know the answer because you took the time to write it out. And it's not even a stranger. It's just an email client that you opened up and write it. No, so I do agree. Sometimes being able to talk to a stranger or talking personal within work boundaries. Have you ever sat on a plane? Yeah.
And turn around? You're on a 6-hour flight or a 13-hour flight, and you just start gassing and talking to somebody.
I've done that.
And then you suddenly realize either you or they are talking about
very personal thing. Yeah.
And they walk away and they might not give you a hug, but they're like, thank you so much. And then you'll be in touch and then you become friends and whatever.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
But that's the same thing, right? But you also build that, it's a stranger and they're not there to judge you, right? They know nothing about the background.
Exactly.
But they look at things actually probably more objectively than subjectively, because your friends and family would probably know a lot, or probably even 20, 30%, which is too much, about a situation. And 100%. I think that's, again, going back to employees, you need to really spend that time with, like, I have a couple of staff members here, he was constantly, I need this time off. And I said, why? He said, I got to go to the hospital. I got to go to this. My wife needs to go to the hospital. So I sat down with him. I said, buddy, is everything all right with the wife? And he says, well, we're going through this.
Yeah.
How do I, so I need this time and this. And I said, look, I went through something similar, right? And he goes, oh, you did? So I'm being vulnerable, right? But I'm sharing with him. But I related to his problem, gave him the time off, and then he comes back stronger. And I think that's the difference here. And I'm not saying nobody does it, but I also think we often forget, or sometimes we genuinely don't have that time to have that personal one-on-one relationship with our staff. And I'm not saying you need to dig into everything. Just be remotely empathetic to them in a soft way, and they will relate to you, and they will. And I think it's classic.
Or make them feel comfortable
in all
too,
our companies. I mean, my late father's company is not. It's not. It's a business we've inherited, and even the businesses we've set up and I've set up. Yeah, my father was involved in terms of he's part of the business, but he never got involved in our businesses yet. Actually, he stayed well away from them. He would guide us and say, okay, you're in this problem. What do you guys want to do? And he would guide us and say, okay, you learned from the mistake. Okay, what did you learn? You learned X. Okay, good, go. I'll be very honest, he was involved in helping us set it up.
Yeah.
But, and I do really miss his guidance and that mentorship, especially when because he was very calm and collective. And, when you're younger, you are a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more flippant, and you're like, no, I want to do it this way. And then go and do it that way. And then you'll realize that when you come back, you need to put your feet on the ice and cool down a bit. And then he'll tell you what, say. So I'll say, why didn't you say this to me in the first place? He said, because I wanted you to learn from that. And I said, but did you learn from that? He said, yeah. But I said, you didn't have a business mentor. Your grandfather passed away years ago. Your father was a lawyer. He said, yeah, but he still had some level of business acumen. He's running a law firm. He was involved in a couple of businesses. And he said, as a lawyer, he would see businesses failing, right? So he would know why they failed. And he would have one or two people who he look up to go and talk to. The same way I do today, apart from my father. I have one or two people who I want to go and talk to. I go to Kenya, for example. There's a certain uncle. I love to go and sit with him for half an hour, and I don't go and ask him any advice. I just have a conversation with him.
Yeah.
And I always get back in the car going, I learned something new today.
Yeah.
Because these guys were cut from a different cloth.
Yeah.
And their grit, their determination was very different. I think we've had it very easy in life.
Yeah, I think that generation has something to it.
Totally.
So I play footy 3 times a week, and we still have these 55-year-olds that play with us. And it's just something else about that. I don't know if it was the food, it was the time in nature, or, playing outside on the streets all day versus us. We kind of grew up around that edge of technology when it was coming into our homes. But yeah, that's something else. The grit, the hustle. Like when we use the word hustle today, we don't know what it means. The people that have done it, for example, my dad, he was 16 or 17. His father had passed away. He got on a random oil tanker, some kind of a tanker in Karachi. He traveled from Punjab, from Lahore to Karachi with his friends. Someone told him there's this place called Sharjah, which is up and coming. This is 1970. He's like, how do we get there? He's like, well, a few of us are going to hide in the engine room of this tanker. You want to come? And he said, yeah. They hid, got to Sharjah. They docked. They didn't get out because police dogs were working around. They stayed in the engine room for 6 hours, got out, and like, oh, what do we do here? There's a mosque right there. They go into a mosque, and the imam kind of looks back after doing the prayer. He's like, I haven't seen your faces before. You guys want jobs? So that level of hustle, to be able to do that, to provide for your family and make meaning for yourself, is something that.
And I think they're built from a different. Yeah. They were built with different mindset. So my grandfather was a barrister. He did very well.
Yeah.
My father went to study in England, near Liverpool. And I'm a big Liverpool football fan. And it comes from dad, from my father. And I remember watching a couple of football games at home, big games. And, in London in our apartment, and my wife was there. And at one point, we were 3-0 down or something, or 2-0 down or something in the FA Cup final. And we win 3-2, or was it 4-3 or something. And as we were down and everything, you said, relax, we're Liverpool. And there's the reason I'm coming to the story. I remember when we started getting the goals back and getting even and then winning, I remember him jumping off the sofa and pumping his hands. And, my wife's looking at me, she's looking at Dad, and I'm looking at him going, what are you doing? And he's like, we're Liverpool. We never walk alone. And then I said, Dad, where did your love for Liverpool come? He said, obviously I studied there. But I had two choices. I could either go to Everton and support Everton, or I could support Liverpool, but Liverpool was my team. And I said, yeah. So did you go to a lot of matches? He said, yeah, I used to go to the terraces because they used to have terraces in those days. There were no seats. You used to stand on the terraces. He said, I used to stand on the Cop End terrace. I'm like, wow, Cop End? Like, that's like, it's like the Holy Grail at Liverpool, right? And it was a terrace. I said, but, so you used to get a lot of money from Bauji being grandfather. He's like, no, what are you talking about? I'm like, so how did you pay for it? He said, I used to work in the coal carriages in the winter at night. I said, what were you doing in the coal carriages? You were like, what, clean? He said, I used to sweep them. And I looked at my father, I said, what? He said, I used to sweep the coal carriages, earn my money so I could go to football games and go to the dance halls with the girls and do all that.
Yeah.
And that's where I realized, not just then, but many stories like this of who he really was and where he, we're coming back to this, but these are the things that instill you or are instilled in me. I mean, it sounds cliched, but my parents are the compass of my morality. And they very much guide me have always guided me between what's right and wrong. But their grit, I think Dad's ability to stay calm he's seen very challenging times.
Yeah.
But he never, ever, ever let that be known to us. I got to know it in later years when I'd see those challenges because I was older, right?
Yeah. It's the same for me. When I sit now, and I'm 36 now, Dad's 71, and I start to hear stories now, I'm like, why didn't you ever tell us? Like, why are you so calm like the Buddha throughout my upbringing? Like, how could I not have known that you've seen that side of the world? But I'm going to switch gears now, Rishi. We're going to talk about some practical business stuff because this is, however, my first business podcast.
Sure.
So safe to say you're a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I mean we can argue the term, but you have a knack of starting businesses on your own now.
Yep.
I wanted to see one particular thing. How the way you choose your next business venture. What does that look like? Where do you get your ideas from? Do the opportunities come to you? You can talk about it in relation to the ones that you've started, or if there's any other that you're planning in the future. But is it similar to your dad in terms of like you were just there and you saw the opportunity, or was it research, studied, someone came to you? How do you get your ideas to start your new businesses?
So let me sort of clarify how this started. I was working in London.
Yeah.
My wife and I were working there. My brother graduated in London. We had a neighbor who did a very innovative thing. He sold PCB prototyping machines. So you prototype machines with CNC and laser etching. No more chemicals.
So it's kind of like molding?
Yeah, but it's just like a drilling. And, but more sort of drilling, etching. And now it's 3D MI technology and it's even more advanced. And he was an agent for this German company. So my brother is also very entrepreneurial, probably more entrepreneurial than me. He graduated. He decides to my parents had moved to Dubai from the UK. Dad wanted to be a little closer to Kenya. Mum didn't really want to go back to Kenya. We were done with studies. I was married, in London. And he came and he said, I want to bring this distribution, which he did. We did it with this sort of neighbor partner, but that fell apart very quickly, thankfully. And
good riddance.
Yeah, I mean, it just wasn't going to work out, right? And we realized early on. And he sort of started this. And then over that year, I was making trips back here for trade shows and coming back and trying to convince my wife we should move here. And we did. And we moved here. And then I'll be very open with you. We grew that business. He was sales. I was more ops. And through that, we diversified into the car wash. The car wash, we were sitting there and he said, there's so many cars here, Rish, and there's just a wastage of water. So how do we do this? And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, can we not clean cars without water? And we started Googling in those days and checking. So this
was just a random thought on the couch, kind of just...
Yeah, just like this.
Shooting the breeze.
Yeah, okay.
Like, it was in the office or something.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there and he goes, yeah, I think we need to do something like this. So he starts Googling, I start Googling, and then we find these products, we bring these products in, and we're like, well, none of them are going to work in the heat. And then we found this manufacturer where we said, look, in the UK that we found this supply in the UK, but it was really expensive by the time we brought it in. We're like, this isn't cost effective. And we wanted to sell the product to car washing companies, but we realized they're not going to switch to this.
Wait, can I ask, you're talking about getting the product and the suppliers, but did you assess market demand in some way first, or did you go straight to, like, this is going to work?
No, we knew it worked because everybody washes their car like 3 times a week here. So we're like, you go to malls and there was this big drum of water with dirty rag in it and they're just cleaning it. And my mother's like, man, people own like Ferraris here and Lamborghinis and you know, in those days when I moved here, we were like driving around in those diamond lease Nissans, those whatever Mitsubishis.
Yeah.
And it was cool. And I miss those days at times because they were cool. And our office was in Dubai near Burjuman. And you'd walk out and this guy would be there with a bucket cleaning your dirty cars. And I'm like, man, what is this? And he's like, yeah, look at this. So we bought this product and it was too expensive. And then I kept researching and I found this guy in the UK and I said, look, I've got this product. I got this product. This doesn't do this well in the car. It dries too quickly as a waterless agent. And this one doesn't give that sheen and polish. He said, do you mind sending them back to the UK from me? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I sent them back to him and then we flew out to meet this guy. And he literally put this chemical on this like little, it looked like a weighing machine sort of thing.
Like a petri dish almost.
Yeah, but it was more on a steel, like, those weighing machine sort of things. Yeah, but it's basically sort of does the microbiology calculation of what the chemicals are. He said, okay, you got this. And he said, come back tomorrow. So he came back tomorrow.
Scientist, this guy?
Yeah, but it's just working out what works. So he knew, and he gave us 2-3 bottles, and we came back to Dubai, and then we went into the hard slog of testing in the heat and all that. And then we secured contracts together, and that became my baby because he's like, look, I'll look after laser electronics, which was the PCB side, and you look after car wash. And this is where Dad actually stepped in and said, look, I think you two should kind of not split, but take a division of roles of responsibilities within the company. And I learned a lot of lessons in that one. And then while this thing was going on, we also started supplying machines to a company here from the laser side to somebody who was prototyping LED lighting, which was very new and very nascent in the world then. And this chap, like my brother's very aggressive sales side. So he started getting him contracts, my brother very big contracts. And lo and behold, he didn't get paid or we didn't get paid. And we went to a lawyer, and this was just around sort of 2009. So there's a lot of these real estate legacy cases going on and bankruptcy cases going on. And I still remember this meeting very, very well. It was my brother, myself, my father, and this very elderly Emirati lawyer. And he was wearing a sort of dark brown kandura. And I'll never forget this gentleman. And he sat there and he said, you boys have been taught LED lighting. Well, more your brother, but you know it as well. I'm like, yeah. And you sold him machines and he kind of paid you, but didn't pay you. And he owes you guys substantial more money. I know, especially your brother, because he was doing this side sales for him. So you've been done. I'm like, yeah. He's like, just leave it. We're like, what? What do you mean leave it? He's like, yeah, well, like, what is this? Like, you want to go to court? And we're like, well, yeah. And my father, this is where he would say, he would do this with his hand, saying, listen, calm down. Just listen to the old man. Like, probably similar age.
Yeah.
Do this. He said, please, sir, carry on. He said, look, he's taught you everything. And he gave sort of like a fable to us. He said, you know his supply chain. We're like, yeah, we do. But we're like, they won't supply to us. It's like, yeah, but have you tried hard enough? We're like, well, we've emailed them. He's like, well, and are you telling them you're from Dubai? We're like, yes. He's like, well, that's not going to work, is it? Because he's in Dubai. And are you telling them from the Middle East? He's like, yeah. He's like, but you just said you're from Kenya. And we're like, yes, we're from Kenya. He's like, so maybe you need to say you're from Kenya and you're interested in this. Anyway, he then tells us, he said, look, he's taught you something. Let him be that he thinks he's got away free with it. Like, you ain't suing him. There's no money owed to you. Your brother, the companies, whatever. Just let it be. Just let him feel like he's won the battle.
Yeah.
He said, let me give you a story. I'm going to give you my Mercedes. It's 10 years old for free. Take it. I owe you 100,000 dirhams. It's worth 150. Khalas, you take it. And he said, but you'll probably take it, right? We're like, yeah, you're giving me 150,000 dirham Mercedes. He said, but the deal is do it now. You sign now, take the car, debts owed, cancelled everything, you've taken the car. We said, all right, wonderful. So then what? He's like, the story is this. You don't know the real condition of the car. And even if you did some checks on it, you will say, oh, I need to spend 10, 20,000. It's still 150 becomes 130, and I was owed 100. I've done better. He said, the reality is you don't know the full extent of the vehicle, and you will end up spending a lot of money. So you want him to feel he got away, but he'll pay for it later. So he said, I want you guys to make him feel like you pay for it later. So we got back in the car, drove back, sat down, and my dad's like, I hope you two listen to so-and-so. We're like, yeah, but what's he on? Like, what is this? And my brother and I sat there. And then we went for lunch, three of us, which we used to do every day. And then dad's like 3:34. He's like, I'm going home. I'm like, all right, see you. So he's sitting there. So my brother's sitting there and he goes, bro, man, like, there's something about, I said, yeah, I've been thinking about this. There's something about this. He's like, we know his supplier. And we don't just operate as a family in the UAE or the Middle East. We've got so many channels. Mm-hmm. Flew out to Hong Kong, found the supplier, met him, and Bob's your uncle. But more than that, that wasn't the key. The key was we found an even better supplier with a bigger brand. And that story was actually very interesting how we found it. There was a big billboard display of them. And I was researching which companies to go and look for in Hong Kong and China. And we went to the China side border. Nobody would give us time of day. We literally had very little money to go around and nobody would give us samples. But I had found this company here in Hong Kong, but I Googled them from here. But they wouldn't reply. And every time they'd reply, it would come in like some encrypted code.
To the email.
Yeah, it was like, I'd write, hey, Naeem, how you doing? Or, hi, I'm interested. We're flying into Hong Kong. We'd love to come and meet you guys. And they would reply back some nonsense. Like, it was all coded, and there was part of it was in Mandarin, and part of it was in English. And I would print it to see if I could like make, because it's the third time I'd try and print it and say, how does this line up the dots? Is this on like Morse code or something?
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing?
Are they in trouble?
And I'm thinking, but they're part of like one of these massive group in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So we're driving out of somewhere in Kowloon, and there's this massive billboard of this company. And there's a guy holding an LED light bulb.
Yeah.
And jeans, and his torso is a full six-pack, like one of those amazing Abercrombie ads.
Okay.
It looked exactly like an Abercrombie ad, but he's holding a light. And what's the light doing? Lighting up his torso.
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, that's the company. He's like, that's the company. I'm like, yeah. He said, give me the name again. He went on, send the email. Woke up in the morning, Monday morning. There's an email, please come and see us in our offices at 2:00.
What?
I'm like, man, how did that work for you? He said, I don't know, man. It's good teamwork. Let's go. So we went, spoke to them. We got some samples. We came back and we just ripped through the entire hotel industry who was looking to retrofit LED lighting. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing. And then the car wash was also growing beautifully at that time. We had multiple locations, malls, residential towers, commercial buildings. We had private contracts, cleaning fleet cars. So it grew fantastically. That's a quick summary of those three.
You want to tell us about Fika?
Fika was...
Tell the audience a little about what Fika is.
I'll tell you what Fika is. But
or what Boda Bodas. Am I saying that right?
Yeah. And I'll tell you why they're called Boda Bodas. But I'll tell you how Fika came about.
Yeah.
We're on a family holiday. We're on a cruise ship. And we're in the Med. And I'm lying there on a sunbed looking out to the sea. And who's to my left? My brother. And he's looking at me and he turns around and he goes, can I talk to you? I'm like, yeah, what's up? He's like, are you all right? I'm like, yeah, why? He said, I know you've had a couple of drinks, but you seem to be mumbling something to yourself. Have you got a headphone on or something? I'm like, no, why? He's like, you seem like you're talking to yourself. I'm like, why? What's the issue, man? And he's like, what are you thinking? I said, man, I'm bored. He said, well, you're bored in life or you're bored on the cruise ship? I'm like, well, kind of a bit both, man. He said, you're bored here as well? I'm like, yeah, it's nice, but anyways, chill. We need to chill. What's up? He said, what are you thinking? He said, something in your head. I know it. I said, man, there's a lot of talk about EVs, electric vehicles. He said, yes. I said, don't you think we can do this for boda bodas and three-wheelers, tuk-tuks in Kenya? He said, yeah, why don't you go and research it, man? Why don't we do it? Anyway, so a boda boda is a motorbike, usually from an Indian OEM, but it can be Chinese, of course, or any OEM. And they're very big seats, very robust, 125 to 150 cc, some 100 cc. And they got the name boda boda from pretty much our side of Kenya, where the family's from, which is Kisumu, going to the Uganda side. They don't say border to border. They kind of drop the R sometimes. So they go boda boda. So it's like, I'm going border to border, right? But it was actually boda boda. So we used to have a boda boda guy in the office. He was private, gig economy sort of guy in Kenya. And he would sometimes take me and my brother. But more importantly, he would like move our samples really quickly through the traffic. Like, I need to get this light to that end of town, or I need to pick up that document. So you use a boda. He's a courier, basically.
Yeah.
And they do it really efficiently. So one day he comes to me and my brother or me and he goes, I want to buy a motorbike. I'm like, yeah, sure. Tell me. And he goes, I need $150. I'm like looking at him like, you're buying a motorbike for $150? He's like, yes, sir. And I'm like, what sort of crap is that? Like, what shitty bike are you, excuse my language, but what shitty bike are you buying for $150? He said, no, sir. The bike is $1,000. You put $150 down and you microfinance, and we pay $25 a week for 18 to 24 months, depending on our plan. I said, okay. He said, so will you give me the money? I said, Patrick, wait. So I came back the next day and he came and said, so have you decided? I said, yeah, I'm good to give you the money, but I want to understand, how does this work? So I'm an entrepreneur. I want to know, like, how's he going to like...
This is after the cruise ship incident or before?
After. I don't know. It's kind of like things happened, right? It aligned forward, or you could say there was some manifestation, right? So I'm sitting there with him and I'm like, how does this work? So he says, I buy the bike for this and put this deposit and I pay this much. I said, so how much is fuel in it? He said, depending on kilometers, but this is the average. And then I said, obviously there's maintenance, carburetor, oil, brakes in the month. He said, yeah, this. And I said, how much do you earn? He said, I can't tell you that. I said, dude, I'm not interfering in your business. I'm just trying to understand how this works. I'm thinking of something on borders. And he goes, what do you think? I said, first give me this. I asked first. So he sat down, he gave me the numbers. I said, okay, you're making money, but really you're just churning cash over. So you are making
He's playing
money.
A volume game.
Yeah, but he's rotating money basically. Right. He's making money, but he could make a lot more. So I said, what do you think of electric bikes? He says, nah, it's not going to work. Like, why is it not going to work? Where will we charge? How are we going to charge the bike? Sorry, I'm doing Kenya accent.
I like it, yeah. Please do continue.
Where are we going to charge? I'm like, we'll figure that out. Yeah. But electric is dangerous. It can kill us. It can blow up. We'll die. I'm like, okay. Anyway, I said, right.
What WhatsApp forwards have you been getting? By?
So I'm like, dude, here's $150. I literally gave him $150 worth of shillings and said, here's go and do your thing. Yeah. And he said, I'll pay you back sooner. And he did in a month or less. No, it was about a month and a bit. Anyway, I then went off on this Googling tour on the computer and traveling China and traveling India and checking various things. And I was very close to taking on a container of 20 foot and 40 foot. And then it dawned on me. Patrick said, where are we going to charge? I'm like, yeah, I could bring these bikes in, but where the hell am I going to charge this? Anyway, the research showed we needed to build motorbikes with a battery swapping technology. So what fika is in a nutshell? So fika in Swahili means to arrive or have arrived. So fika is basically, we are trying to build a more sustainable, affordable electric motorbike, but a transport system for boda bodas, or you could say motorbike users in East Africa and wider Africa. Yeah. So our focus isn't just Kenya or East Africa, it's right across Africa.
Yeah.
And we intend to do that and have been doing it through an electric motorbike with a battery swappable technology, which is IoT driven, in the battery with a full BMS system. So we know where the battery is, we know where the IoT gives us all the GPS coordinates, and we can see the battery health and conditions as well, where it's been swapped, how many times it's been swapped, the health and state of the battery, so on and so forth. And that's basically what Fika is. We built 2 POCs. They landed in March 2020, which is probably the most ideal time they could not have landed in Kenya because of COVID. But we did some aggressive testing. We enhanced the bike from a hub motor to a mid motor. We bought 24 units in. We chose low-hanging fruit to go into activation, which is B2B.
So
Rewind.
courier companies and stuff like that?
Yeah, courier, small SMEs who have 3 bikes, 5 bikes, 10 bikes, or third-party logistics companies, TPLs, is commonly called here as well. Rewind a little bit, end of Jan 2020, February 2020. I did a course in MIT by a fantastic professor called Bill Olet. We actually brought him into EO chapter here last year. He did what is called one of his flagship courses is called Disciplined Entrepreneurship. Or the Entrepreneurship. Disciplined Entrepreneurship is the name of the book, actually, but Entrepreneurship Development Program, EDP, is the name of the course. And he basically teaches you how to build an IDE, not an SME, and the hockey stick approach. And I learned so much through that course. And what I really learned was know your customer. Do you have a paying customer? Build the persona out of your customer. So I had Patrick, right? So I started building out that persona of what a Patrick is and what a Julius is and what a, Onyango is or whatever he is. And sorry, I'm saying he, but that's the predominant level of the persona there.
Sure.
Of a Buddha rider. And then do you have a paying customer is when you know you've got a business model to go forward to. And then who's your decision-making unit? Who's your decision-making person? There could be multiple or just one person. And how are you going to scale this? And how to do A/B testing. Because we did all that. We actually built a mock business of doing that in our 6-7 day course. And it was phenomenal. And it also helped me during COVID when the car wash business shut down and I had to pivot to disinfection and sanitization. Somebody said, why don't you look into this? And I said, yeah, but how would I get customers? So I started sticking out, got a quick flyer made and started sticking out ads on Facebook and Instagram. And I didn't really get much traction. I got a few from Facebook. And then I very quickly realized those are eyeballing places, not so much Facebook, but definitely Instagram. Instagram is about PR and eyeballing. That's what it is, right? You and I will finish today and I'll take a great picture of us 2 handsome men and I'll Instagram it, and it's great PR for me, right?
Sure.
And maybe for you.
Yeah.
No, probably more for you.
Well, this is the whole game.
Yeah, there you go. And then I realized I'm going to get onto Google Ads because part of the thing was, how do you target your customers? How do you get your product? And how do you A/B test that? You can A/B test anything through Google, right? These
Of course.
days. And that's what I did. I put up a quick website using, I don't know, one of these GoDaddy.com things.
Yeah. Just a landing page.
Landing page, phone number, put some pictures up there. Got someone in the office to help me from the lighting design team. We put this thing, it looked okay. And got through a friend, got a really nice connect on a Google sort of analytics guy.
Yeah.
A wonderful
like a specialist.
Russian guy, Daniel, who've actually referred to several EOs and love him.
Yeah.
And he's really super efficient because he's analytical. And that's what Google Ads is about. It's about analytics at the end of the day and understanding. And he said, well, you need to spend so many thousands on this. I'm like, man, I don't have that sort of money. I'm like literally at 0 revenue for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And we got off onto that foot. And those are the learnings from small learnings. They're not the big scale learnings, but they're the foot learnings of how you can having to, venture into something new. And I applied that here, right? Well, not necessarily something new, but a new vertical, but that wasn't the course, but I applied that here. And I remember the guy in the office, Praj, ringing me up on a Monday. He's like, he was working from home, right? And he goes, so have we got the disinfection approval? I'm like, yeah, it's come through, which a friend of mine helped me get very quickly and very appreciative to him. And guess what happens? The phone starts ringing. The email comes through. And I think in the first week, we did like 50 jobs.
Wow.
And I'm like, and Prajwal's first question to me, Praj is like, so which team will we use? I said, the car washers, because there's no car washing. How hard is it to disinfect?
They're not going to hire new people.
And he's like, what do you mean? They're not trained. I said, we train them. He said, but how? I said, get in this other disinfection company to train us and say it's for our own thing.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We used a competitor to come in and train us. And then obviously we showed them loads and loads of reels off the internet of how they do it in the US and everything.
Yeah.
And I realized that's what kept the lights on in the business for the car wash.
Yeah.
And then and obviously, thankfully, we're in Dubai, we're in the UAE. They were great with COVID. We were back on our feet, opening up in June. The next 6 months were struggles. But then with cost cutting and everything, we became more effective in our operations. But going back to Fika.
Yeah.
So Fika, we went down this B2B, which was, you could say...
Were you always B2B focused, or did you start thinking
No,
B2C?
B2C is the main focus, which is your border owner, your border rider. But the
individual itself.
Yeah, the individual, right? But the B2B was the easier low-hanging fruit. And that's where we could go. And I learned, I guess, through the years of being an entrepreneur, but just in life, but in setting up small businesses. And I think I said it to you earlier. Start small.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect your offering. If you can perfect your offering, right? Your product, whatever it is, whatever your offering is, service, whatever, get it perfect. And knowing you have a paying customer, then the scalability and the aggressive scale will come.
Mm-hmm.
But, start small and be smart about what you do.
How do you reconcile that with speed? Because we're talking about getting new ideas and being a serial entrepreneur. I imagine myself to be a serial entrepreneur at some point in my life. I'm just visioning, it's on my vision board. I got this holding company. I got this agency for marketing. I got this podcast going, and A, B, and C. I've got a studio, et cetera, et cetera. I want to be able to turn myself into a guy that can reconcile quick decision making, so not overthinking and not overcalculating and not, tripping on my own thoughts and never getting it done, versus that perfectionism, which we talked about before recording, protecting the reputation as well, not going to market with something crappy, but also not missing out on the opportunity and the speed of movement. So what's the balance like for you between those two things?
I've learned in various experiences in life, it doesn't have to be with business. Mm-hmm. If you rush things too quickly and you haven't got all the loose ends tied up, then you are bound to fail. Yeah, you learn from that, and that's what we've learned, right?
Yeah,
that's what I've learned, or we learn that you learn from your mistakes and you take them forward and correct them. I think you need to find that balance. I'll give you a classic example. Fika, 24 bikes were great, great, 500,000 kilometers already on the odometers, 5,000 battery swaps, doing great stuff. And then the next set of kits came in. And I had this slight downtime in Kenya last year in July, August. And I'm like, right, gonna hit the ground running. Borders now. Also gonna carry on with leasing. And then, I don't know, I started speaking to some of the team, Josh in engineering, and a couple of clients. And like, so you got the new bikes? I'm like, yeah. So you got a picture of them? I said, yeah, we've assembled two. Do you want to see them? He says, yeah, but I thought you were going to make the seat a little longer and a little bit more, robustness here and there. And I heard that once, I heard it twice. And then Josh is saying the same thing to me. He said, sir, we've brought them in now. How do we do this? I said, there's ways, we'll work it out, but we don't want to damage the homologation and stuff. So we went through that. And I went to the drawing board, and two very, very good friends of mine. Well, I wouldn't say they were friends at the time. They were people I was introduced to, two brothers, incidentally, who have become very close to me in this process and have supported me endlessly in making some changes to the bike. Simple things: longer, bigger, thicker seat, better carrier, better foot carrier, more advanced foot carrier in the rear so they can carry goods if they're not carrying a passenger.
It's just sturdier bike.
Yeah. And they've just been so instrumental in helping me. And that delayed us from August, because you build and you test and you're not building the whole bike or the chassis. You're not touching the chassis frame. You're just adding some extensions to the seats and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's ways of bolting it on without damaging, touching on the homologation of the actual bike. And we only got to a finished product by sort of November, December after all the testing. And now we're selling. So the old me could have said, oh, it's nearly done. Let's just get it on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Or forget it. We don't need to worry about the longer seat and all. Let's just get it on the road.
Yeah.
And that would have been that speed element, that go to market is more important. Then what happens? You fail. Word gets round.
Yeah.
Every time you launch any business, literally, unless it's super unique, you are operating in a village. That's how I look at things. You're operating in a village, and word, that bad news goes around quickly.
Yeah, reputation
Reputation is just I can't. It's not something I can have it. There's a name. It's not just a brand name. There's also my pride and my family name.
Of course.
And I'm not going to have that reputation on me, especially in something where I'm trying to improve the lives of people at the bottom of the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah.
And now, and what gives me comfort is now we've got plenty of competitors, and they've raised tons and tons of money. But our bike is being compared toe to toe with one or two of them right up there, and we're beating them now in sales or getting the activations there.
Yeah.
And that gives me the comfort that be patient. And what did I say earlier? Start small, perfect your product.
Yeah, it's the almost the antithesis, if I get that word right, of Silicon Valley, where they're the move fast, break things kind of philosophy, which to me sounded like horse crap, but it was being spread through every major company, and they started using different words like launch, iterate, and hidden behind what the word iterate was actually launch incomplete and figure it out as you go. And maybe the damage is less when it's an online tool or something like that. But these products like you're talking about, people are using.
But you're dealing with people's safety.
Yeah, you're
Right.
like it's quite dangerous.
So you wake up in the
literally
middle of
to
the
right.
night and you remember Patrick from 2.5 years ago, sir,
Yeah,
I don't want the bike to blow me up,
yeah,
right? That's
Yeah.
on my conscience,
of course.
right? There's a fellow human being on a bike
Yeah,
carrying a lady with her son going to school.
yeah,
I can't take that on my head. I could not ever live with myself if something. So I'd rather take my time in getting it perfect.
yeah,
And that's, I think, where we're at now. Even as of this morning, there's been a very small change
yeah,
on the bike, which is not delayed us. It's just going to enhance things better for what we need to do in the future.
yeah.
And, I got a call from somebody on Monday saying, yeah, we'll take those 5 bikes, put them in the showroom. We've got customers coming this afternoon. I'm like, no, I want to just make this small change. You'll get them on Friday or Saturday. He's like, but we lose the sale. I said, no, you won't. You'll just tell them to come back on Friday
Yeah.
or Saturday or next Monday, and they will buy the bikes.
Yeah.
And guess what? They will. Because now they will come and they'll say, I don't like the way this thing sits on the bike. It's a very small piece on the bike,
Yeah.
but it's an irritant, right? Which irritates me. And I said, what's the way around this? It's like this. And
Yeah.
they've worked on it, the team, and it's changed. And that,
Especially if it's fixable or workable.
it is fixable.
And it is an objection to a customer, and you can work on it, so then do it. I had, for example, like a year ago, I had someone reach out to me at the same time that I was thinking of offering consulting services. So we've launched and built our agency, and there's another lady that wanted to do the same and wanted to hire me to like help her guide through the 0 to 1 phase. And at that time, just wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I didn't have like what my scope of work would be, what I would teach, how long it would take, how much it would cost. And Alina and I sat down. I told you before we started, she's the speedy one. She's a rabbit. So she's like, just put something together and just send it through and then try it out. And I kept thinking, and I couldn't articulate it at the time, but it was more of a reputational thing. If this is going to be my first, I want it to be something that I can use as a case study. And also not damage me, so that it could be my first and my last if I do it really quick. And lo and behold, I waited a few months enough to realize that that's not something I want to do either. So that's the other thing of taking your time. Sometimes you get through 20, 25% way through and you're like, hold on a second. This is not what I thought it was going to be. And I'm not overcommitted to something now or living a new life
that we didn't want to do, you know?
And I think that's being accepting of, does this fit where you want to be in your life? But more importantly, also not being greedy,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And
Or that's short-term thinking too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Greed and short-term thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people. So I used to have short term. Well, we've all had it, right? We've all, and as an entrepreneur, you all look for the short term thinking.
Of course.
Now, when we did Fika, there was a objective plan to short term B2B leasing. Knowingly that at this point in time, we're going to end those leases and then we'll either sell the secondhand bikes or give them off to other sort of non-B2B operators of third party for leasing.
Yeah.
And that'll keep that bit of the lights or sell the bikes on. But our ultimate game was, we always knew this was about traction. And how Bill Olet always told me, get your paying customer in the door. We got the paying customer, kept the lights on the road, gave you the kilometers, gave us the battery swaps, gave us the understanding to make things perfect. Yeah, that bike wasn't perfect, but it was perfect for the utility use that it had, right? Or the productive use, so to speak. And today, we're just able to get better and better at what we do. Now, I sound like devil's advocate. Will you always have a perfect product? No.
Probably not.
Because you're always iterating. You're always wanting to improve. Why? Because your customer wants something better.
Yeah.
You know, the market wants something better. And you always have to listen to your customer.
Yeah.
Right? Why have I also want to step away from B2B? We'll sell to B2Bs. Yes, there's good income and revenue, but they're not the bigger play. I find with B2B, it's a very bespoke scenario. Oh, I want this extra thing on the bike and I want that. And because you're a startup, you kind of feel like you need to bend over backwards and customers right and you need to do it. And I had to have a very harsh call with somebody yesterday and say, listen, you're comparing my bike to an EV bike, which is not the market dominant leader in ICE bikes or, you know, industrial combustion engine bikes. We've modeled our bike to be on the leading two and we're there. But you're trying to give us back because you were using this bike, which many do, and we appreciate that, and we acknowledge that. But surely I can't keep making these small trinket changes for you at an FOC basis.
Yeah.
Oh, I never asked for it for an FOC. And I said, well, your email exchange to me actually said, you're being a little, what was the word he used? Non-committal in how you're going to make the changes. I said, there was something very committal about me. You want these changes, this is the cost. And he's like, yes, but I found that non-committal. I'm like, okay, matter of interpretation. How do we move forward? He said, what will it cost? I said, this is going to come from this guy. This is his cost. Please go and buy it from him directly. Oh, you're being transparent. I said, there's nothing to hide. I'm not here to make $2, $5. Because if I get involved, I'm going to get involved in sourcing, buying, sampling, and all this for you. He's like, yeah, but I said, but that's what you want me to do. I'm not going to get distracted on this. You want this on the additional stuff on the bike? Go and get it done. And sometimes you have to have harsh conversations, even with your customers.
Yeah.
But not in an aggressive way, in a more softer, explanatory version to let them understand the space you're in as a business, but understand the space and the need they have, but give them the solution. And I gave him the solution, right? There is this solution. It cost X, go to him. Unfortunately, he went to X and it came out 15% higher.
Yeah.
And I said to my friend, I said, why are you charging him 15% higher? He said, oh, this is the stuff you needed. Dude, I was giving it to you at cost. I'm like, man, just give it to him at cost because now I'm getting calls that you're making 15%.
Yeah.
He's like, oh man, you serious? I said, it's just 4 bikes for him. Please just do it.
Yeah.
But again, there's that relationship that you help your customer.
Yeah. It's the education. Now, without sounding too mean, but you got to educate your customer at some points about what you do as a business, what you stand for, and what the deal was.
What are your cores, right?
What the deal was. Like when we started working together, you know, customer, whether it's a service or a product, this was the deal that we started working on. Yeah. You as a customer have the right to wish and want, which is why competition exists. Because if I don't do what you want, there may be someone else.
Elsewhere.
I want to switch to competition. How do you generally, in all your businesses, keep a tab on competition? I'll tell you why I ask, because currently with my agency, we're in a red ocean. Extremely red. The reddest of red oceans is marketing agencies. Everyone has one. And it's when we started it, we looked at no one and we just did our own thing. And we continue to do that because it just freaks me out. The number of agencies are out there, their capabilities, the years of experience and their marketing messages and all that. I just want to put my head down and just work. But how do you look at competition? Do you keep tabs on? Do you spy? Do you you just are a Google warrior with that kind of thing? Do you attend events and exhibitions? How are you keeping on top of what's going on? What your competitors are doing in your different businesses?
So I don't run the lighting business so much now for the last 2-3 years. I've been involved more with Fika and my brother runs it. But back in the day, we'd always keep an eye out on what competitors are doing, what new products are coming. But one of my strengths in the business was also to be innovative and always find new products and sourcing and going to trade shows and all that. So when you go to trade shows, you're obviously seeing your competitors or suppliers who are supplying to your competitors, and then you're working out where they're getting their product from. I think it's important to keep a track on your competitors. But having said that, I think it's also very dangerous to copy your competitors. I think it's also very dangerous to follow your competitors. You don't actually know the reason why they're doing what they're doing. They might have a client or a niche that's driven them there and it's paying their bread and butter.
Yeah.
Or it's their bread and butter business. So you don't actually know the full story. So I always say, stick to your strengths, stick to your core. That doesn't mean you have to do things cheaper because you're losing a tender or losing a bid or you're not getting a client. Stick to your core, but also always make sure you demonstrate you have a better product offering and explain that. But competitors, I mean, it sounds very simple, but better product offering. But if you know your customer, you should be able to win your customer over, regardless of saying, I'm going to give it you 10% cheaper or I'm going to give you freebies. Yeah, sometimes as startups, we've had to do that, right? I've been very conscious in Fika not to do that because I believe once given free, it becomes a habit, but also given free also becomes
it's
like
a reputation thing again,
exactly.
Right?
That is this really a good quality product? Then he's just giving it to me free.
Yeah.
On the other side of this is, I love competition.
Why?
So as a person, you talked about anti-fragility, which is actually what Bill Orlitt's motto is in his course. I'm giving him a lot of plugs, actually.
Yeah, you better share the commission on that first.
He has this notion about anti-fragility, which obviously he's a big sort of believer of, is it Dr.
Naeem
Taleb's book.
But for people who may not know anti-fragility, how would you define or describe it?
Thriving in chaos.
I'd paint the picture of the Hydra when you cut off one arm and it grows back two. Or how do you... I've had this with people too, like the boss I told you about, the first boss that I ever had. We got into a big row once, big fight, and I was young and energetic. We were able to come out of that fight closer and stronger together. And I felt like that's when I really learned the meaning of that word. It's like our relationship is anti-fragile between me and Bernadette. That's the kind of people we are. If it gets attacked, we get stronger. I like the Hydra. But anyways.
But you're right.
Yeah.
Because it's also with sometimes, have you been in a situation you've got into a real, excuse my language, shit show with a client?
Mm-hmm.
But
then you
today,
come back,
3 years down the line, they're your best client and you have the best working relationship with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That also is similar, right? It is being anti-fragile. But I actually like, why I also relate thriving in chaos is because you're anti-fragile. You're able to thrive in chaos.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it when there are these, and they happen, everything is going smooth, everything's going very silky, looks good, targets are being met, money's rolling in, everyone's comfortable, because then this apathy seeps in and people become into a lull. I like it when we're on our toes all the time and pushing and pushing and busy and busy and busy. Like the last, for Fika especially, the last 3.5, 4 weeks has been immense. I mean, you know, with my schedule, even the last 2 to 3 months, just starting in a time.
Just getting you here, Rishi.
Yes.
Getting you here.
And part of that is, you know, like these last few weeks have just been so intense for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I am so pumped up, so energized. I've never felt greater in what we're doing. I had a call with my team on Saturday afternoon from here around 11, 12 o'clock. So it's early morning for them, they're about an hour behind. And I did it from home. And my daughter walks in. She's 7 3/4, nearly 8. And she knocks on the door and she goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Why? I'm on a call." She's like, "Why are you like
So
shouting
energetic.
like a priest?" I'm like, "Excuse me." And I had got into this motion of being so motivational and like really I'm like, "Guys, look, you really need to sort this out. We've got a massive week ahead. We've got, you know, the following 6 activations coming. You're rectifying this on the bike. This is the deadline. This is this. You know, you really need to feel the passion." And they're coming back to me going, "Sir, this is our company. We're going to do this. We're going to do that." And I'm, you know, and I actually felt very deflated when she said that. I thought, hang on, man, like, was I making myself look like a tit? Because, you know, yeah, you know, like, did I sound like a fool there? Like, did I really sound like a preacher? You know? And come Tuesday night, last night, we're ahead of target and everything we're doing, and I'm thinking, wow, it worked. You know, because I like it when we're busy up, because my juices in my head, they just are on overdrive.
I'm the same.
Like I hate I love it when it's busy, like
Yeah.
super, super busy. I've got a million things going on.
Yeah.
You know, I'm promoting Remarkable today, but I got a Remarkable yesterday. I went straight to the calendar tool.
Yeah.
And I started writing my calendar stuff for today in terms of things to do list. And I wrote 32 things. And that's just for today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, when I have an empty to-do list, I get nothing done.
Yeah.
When I have 50 things to do, I get 52 things done.
Yeah. Or maybe more.
I don't know what that is, but like I've noticed that in football too. When my team is winning 5-0, I don't feel like playing.
Yeah.
But when we're like a goal away or 2 goals away and we're down,
yeah,
it's just so much more enjoyable. Every touch of the ball is so much more
you
enjoyable.
go back to competitors.
Yeah.
I have very good relationships with some of my competitors.
Mm-hmm.
So especially in the EV space in Kenya. I go and have a beer and a meal with 2 or 3 of them at a time.
Yeah.
And it's great because, you know, we'll drink, we'll eat, we get to know about each other, we get to know about each other's kids, you know. A competitor of mine's father passed away recently. I was on a call with him. He said, "Do you know how much this means to me?" I said, "I don't know because I'm your competitor." He said, "Yeah, but it means more to me that you actually rang me and passed on your condolences to me." And he says, "There's something different about this, Rish." I said, I see friendship. I said, on the playing field, ask no quarter, none given. Mm-hmm. On the playing field, I repeat, ask no quarter, none given. He said, fair game, buddy. I said, but here, when we talk, when we meet at exhibitions, we meet at venture talks, VCs, investors, whatever you're doing. Yeah, again, ask no quarter, none given. But when we're sitting around in the afternoon, having lunch, having beers, we're friends.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think the cake is big enough.
Absolutely.
And we can all share it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we all want all of it. Mm-hmm. But then again, greed is a very dangerous thing.
Yeah.
And then you become gluttonous and then you end up in
it's not a
problems.
zero-sum game, right? Like doing any kind of venture is, if you have zero-sum thinking, which I used to. I'm trying to grow out of it, right? I want my share. Only one person can win, me or you. And it's been a journey. I do want to switch topics. We've been talking a bit about, so we've talked about your influences early on, getting into business. We've spent a bit of time talking about Fika and your other businesses. We can be here for another 3 hours because I do have questions for 3 hours. But I want to jump into the effect or the impact EO or entrepreneurs organization has had on you? And specifically, let me ask it this way. What unfair advantage do you think you've gained personally because of EO? Because I've heard that it's a sexy thing to say, right? As a business, you got to have an unfair advantage in the market. And what do you think that has been for you with EO?
So what have I gained as an unfair advantage from EO?
Yeah.
I think it's more the ability or knowing that I'm in a group of like-minded people, and especially my forum, we're 8 of us, that they're this amazing sounding board for me, you know. But that if you look at the wider group of 130 members, and then of course accelerators like yourself, which is what, another 30, that we're all in this together. We're all entrepreneurs. We're all at different scales. But this ability to know that I can talk freely with confidence and confidentiality to my fellow peers and not be judged, but walk away with 9 times out of 10, always a learning of some sort. So if I'm playing paddle with the EO boys and girls and ladies on a Sunday, and we're just having coffee, and there's always some learning or a snippet that comes out of it. Being in forum and being able to share candidly in a safe space with pure confidentiality gives me that unfair advantage, that I have these amazing people and I'm also there for them, you know, because you have to give back. You have to give back. And to me, it's been so far an amazing journey with them, with being part of the Entrepreneurs Organization, in being a member, the value you get from peer-to-peer conversations, like I mentioned, peer-to-peer learnings, the access to certain learnings that you wouldn't ordinarily get. And let me give you a real interesting one, which I actually thought about 3 months ago, is would I go to a talk and spend $200, $300, $400, $500 to go and listen to a motivational speaker or do a course on KPIs and stuff? I think being part of the organization has driven me to have that better thirst for learning, whether it's for my business, my personal growth, my family, my community, whatever it is, you know. We did a very simple thing, nothing to relate to the business. We did a little talk on cyberbullying for kids the other day. I've seen hundreds of these courses turn up on my feeds. Cyberbullying, you know, speak to your kids, and even the school emails. And you'll read it and you'll act on it and you won't probably dig deeper.
Yeah.
But because I'm part of this organization, you understand that others have gone through it because they talk to you about it candidly, right? And because of that, you attend that course because you've seen somebody else's experience, or heard about it.
So it's not even just about business stuff. It's just being a wholesome
community. You know, we are one phenomenal community of entrepreneurs. We're a family. And I'm very, very fortunate that, and I think we all are as members of EO, not just in the UAE, but globally across the hundreds and hundreds of chapters we have across the globe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what about let's dig into some of the businesses within this EO community. Which businesses? Minus the founder, doesn't have to be your favorite founder there, but what businesses do you find really interesting that when you came across someone who has a certain kind of business, you're like, wow, that's cool. I wish I would have done that. Are there any businesses that you admire within your forum or just the larger EO community in general?
Yeah, I mean, one is MC, Mary Christine, who does Fruitful Day. I think such an innovative way of, the more sort of healthy, nutritional way, and getting it into corporates and then getting it into direct to consumers, and then the way she's expanded her business. And having followed her journey through the EOA program, which I was once on the board there, and then seeing her grow. And we did this competition sort of thing where we trained accelerators on how to pitch their business because we were doing a Dragon's Den
Shark Tank.
Yeah, we're doing a
thing.
Shark Tank Dragon's Den thing, and we actually did it. And we got a trainer to come in and train, and I remember MC being part of this process. And 2, 3 of them or 4 of them pitched, and we did it in this very cool venue, which used to be in TCOM called the Barbary. It had these like sort of a very sort of New York
Lights and
loft,
smoke.
you know,
coming
those
out,
low sort of Art Deco style chairs with the judges all sitting there and fellow entrepreneurs. And we had a VC who'd been invited in to come and sit, and it was great.
Yeah.
And then seeing that business evolve, I think MC's was great. Another one in my forum is a guy called Faisal. He runs a very large software company in the world, but his passion is being outdoors. And he does these conversions of off-road vehicles. So he'll take a Ford Transit van and make it into this beautiful, luxurious sort of sleepover van that you can probably drive away anywhere into the desert. And he takes these Land Rovers and this Mercedes military truck, right, that sleeps 6 people. And it's got a fully fledged kitchen, you know, showering facilities and most of it's outdoors, but it all opens out into this big grand. And these are the things that fascinate me. I mean, there's so many in EO.
Yeah.
There are just so many
I bet that's the most fun part, right? Like just coming across like, wow.
But that also pushes you. So I was part of EO when I went through this whole FICA thing, right? I was already engrossed, 2-3 years into it, engrossed into it. And it makes you think that, would I have ordinarily thought I'm bored in the business is done? But your peers push and elevate you to the next level. I'm not saying you need to be better and all things. You need to be, always innovative, always thinking. But, are you really happy in your space? And I wasn't at the time. Yeah. I was happy that we were doing well, but was I happy that was I enjoying what I do? No, I wasn't.
I think the distinction is, are you happy or are you comfortable?
Yeah.
Because sometimes they're not the same.
Yeah. And that was the point, a reflection point.
Yeah.
A very famous entrepreneur from the UAE, we did a talk with him in EO, was Fadi Gandour from Aramex. And somebody asked him, he says, Fadi, when did you know that you're going to, exit Aramex or put it on the stock exchange and list it and everything? He said, there will come a point in your life, and you should have this realization, which I did, that that accepting point in life that you will at some point fall out of love with your business. You won't hate it, you just won't have that enjoyment. So not so much love, don't have that attachment. Learn that you have to detach from it. Mm-hmm. And you do that. You have to be accepting about it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think
absolutely.
And that's what, and there are many businesses in EO, I think, which are so unique. We've got JD who does this aggregating trucking model of aggregating all these truck drivers together. I think that's really cool.
What exactly is that?
So I'd be wrong to be pushing his business, but JD is he's like an aggregated model of getting all these truck drivers on these these Patan style guys and getting them all on an aggregator platform, getting into logistics and getting into the logistics and booking them and online. And I'd be wrong in selling his business here.
Yeah.
But, I find JD a phenomenal. Every entrepreneur of ours is so unique and so different.
I think, when you first hear about someone breaking the fastest mile ever ran, and then everyone starts breaking it. Or if you break the sound barrier once in Mach 3 and then everyone starts, just when you see these people and you see what's possible, it gives you that, what? It is possible. It's not the thing that I'm dreaming about is not impossible because look around me.
But look at it on a global scale.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been fortunate to travel a lot with EO for different reasons on leadership and stuff.
Yeah.
You land up in an event and the speaker is the founder of Trivago, but he happens to be a fellow EOer, right? That access to somebody doesn't come easily, right?
Yeah.
There's this very, you see these wines in these restaurants here. They're called De Luca wines, the Italian sort of labeled wines, DE and then Luca.
Sure.
or maybe it's D, no, not DED, and then Luca, and quite colorful sort of logo and stuff. And, you know, I was on this leadership call last year on this particular thing. I was doing a leadership on the regional level, and we had to chime into a global call once a month. And I'm talking to this entrepreneur. I'm like, Katie, what do you do? And she says, I do DeLuca wines. I'm like, okay. And then I look at this, and she's a big, you know, yeah.
I like that. Just being able, that's you know, if telling people that if you can't get into you, start a podcast. Because I get the same thing, right? Every week I get to meet someone like you, and I hear your stories, and I hear the wisdom that you've carried forward through the people that you've been around as well. And Alina and I sit and watch these episodes together, and we take notes like nerds. Like, hey, remember when Rishi said this? Or remember when Roma said that?
But make sure it works for you and your goals and your objectives.
Yeah, we do challenge a lot of it. There are people that come on that I just generally agree more with from a very principled standpoint. So like you, I haven't been able to challenge you because a lot of what you're saying is already what I'm thinking. And then I'll have someone on that is completely like, for example, Roma and I are very different. She's a bit more, let's move fast, let's not waste time, let's get stuff done. And higher energy than mine. Even my talking pace is a bit slower, hers is faster. So that kind of dialogue also, the contrast also helps you discover who you truly are and what you need to do. So it's good to surround yourself with like that mix for me. We are going to wrap up very soon.
Okay.
As suggested by our lovely friend David there. I do have one. I don't know if this is a weird question, but I'm stealing it from Tim Ferriss. Are you a Tim Ferriss fan? Do you know him? Care about him?
Not really. I don't care about him, but I know of him. But yeah.
Let me see if I ask this right. So if you had a giant billboard
Yeah.
on Sheikh Zayed Road, let's say, the giantess of billboards,
Yeah.
what message would you put out there?
To entrepreneurs?
To anyone? Preferably be entrepreneurs, but it can't be buy my product. It can't be a sales message. What would you wish to be seen? These millions of cars driving by every day. And it can't be about a 4-day work week.
Look, there are many cliche ones, right? Follow your dreams, which is true. You know, there's just so many, but I think I'll be repeating, but this one really resonates with me in the space I'm in today, which is similar to, I don't know how to articulate this on a billboard, but, you know, given it's a message to entrepreneurs, you know, maybe there'll be something saying message to entrepreneurs, or it's like something, you know, from the entrepreneurs organization, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
But I would still reiterate to all entrepreneurs, you know, start small, perfect your product. So start small, perfect your offering, scale. And I think that in its simplicity, in how I look at things, very black and white, I don't usually pick up the gray paintbrush, should really resonate to, I mean, you can do, like I said, the follow your dreams, you know, it's not 9 to 5. It's not 9 to 5, and, you know, the hustle is real and all that. But for me, it's the start small, perfect your product and scale. Because if you right there think big, we all think big, but you always have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And you always have to get it right.
Yeah. And if I were to add to your message, I'd write direction over speed.
Oh, I really like that one today.
Yeah. There's a bunch of things I still want to talk to you about. We will have to get you back for round 2, I think.
Oh.
I want to talk to you about overwhelm, and if you ever lose focus, how you get back your focus. I want to talk about your best and worthwhile investments. I want to talk about how you measure, you know, success for yourself on a day-to-day or month-to-month basis. I want to talk about financial freedom. There's a bunch of stuff I still want to talk to you about.
You need to come back?
I think we'll need to do a round 2 at some point and get more stories, and maybe Fika's grown a little bit, so we'll have more Fika stories to go with.
I'd love to.
But I've enjoyed this. I've taken a good amount of notes. Most of them I felt some peace talking to you, because I don't feel stupid about thinking what I was thinking about certain things. I will challenge my own thinking though when I go home and compare these notes with Alina. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on, and start small and get the right thing out.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Rishi.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks.
Cheers, buddy.
Thank you.